the violent side of abuse is often the most acknowledged and recognised, but no one actually talks about the emotional side. And I think I've had a lot of young ladies reach out to me about narcissistic abuse and the impact that that has, and they're feeling very trapped in relationships that they feel like they can't explain what they're going through. So narcissism is a very difficult one. I think a lot of people do throw the word around. Sometimes it's taken too lightly, and sometimes it's like overused. So it's understanding and knowing the difference. But narcissistic abuse is actually very damaging, and I think it's underestimated the power of narcissistic abuse. Victims often, struggle with how to live normally after being in such abusive relationships. And some people would say, well, he wasn't that bad, or she wasn't that bad. And women are equally narcissists. I think the men are targeted about narcissistic abuse over women, but there are a lot of women in relationships that are also extremely narcissistic. My personal opinion is I think narcissists are bred from childhood, male or female. They're all among us. The damage that they cause in the way that they behave, it's unless you've suffered it, it's a bit of a weird cocktail of control and manipulation and like gaslighting, and they actually tend to think that they're the only person on the planet, and they will never have any sympathy for you. They lack empathy completely. There's no empathy in them whatsoever. They can cry for themselves, they can do whatever for themselves, but they won't have it for somebody else. And in any scenario, it'll always be brought back to them about how they're affected. It will never be about you. So there's this cycle of stuff that goes round in the mindset, and it's the depth of it. Now, a lot of people say, how would you even end up with that? And I've spoken about this before. You don't know. This is something that sort of like creeps up on people in a relationship, especially, but it doesn't have to be husband and wife. It doesn't have to be boyfriend and girlfriend. It doesn't have to be another. You can even have narcissists as your own siblings. It's everywhere. Like, they can't be told no. They've never been told no from childhood. They think they're more superior than everybody else, and their need comes above and beyond everybody else. And where you fall into that trap at what stage, no one actually really knows and understands, to be honest, because it all becomes so confusing, because you're quite often left scratching your head and questioning yourself. Did that really just happen? Did that happen? And they're very good at making up scenarios as well and claiming things happened that didn't happen. And if you're busy all the time and you don't pay much attention, what then happens is that things get missed and they somehow get away with it. So what ends up happening is that the problem escalates because no one actually challenges them. So when somebody challenges somebody with such behaviours, it then becomes difficult, because then they start to fight back. And quite often it can become aggressive, because to tell them no, or I don't like that, they don't like it, because no matter how bad they are, no matter how abusive they may be, no matter how disrespectful they may be, they have never, ever been told no. And it's because everyone treads on eggshells around their behaviour, because everyone's frightened of the backlash. And there'll be silent treatments. There could either be aggressive outbursts and storming out, slamming doors. All of this stuff goes on. So the victims actually develop avoidant behaviours, which becomes their coping mechanism. And it's just a huge trap. So they're very arrogant as well. And you can't fight against that arrogance. And I think people don't understand the depth of the damage that this actually causes, because during that process, when you're in these kind of relationships, whether it's in a personal relationship, like as in a boyfriend, girlfriend, or a husband or wife, or whether it's family members, even friends. You can even get narcissistic friends that will actually bully and manipulate you. And you don't actually realise, or something to do with, I'll give you an example, like, let's say somebody suffers with like depression and anxiety, but they then are constantly projecting on you. But when you've got something going on, they've got no empathy for you. That's not the depression and anxiety talking, because actually the depression and anxiety is masking the underlying narcissism when the rest of the behaviours you're not noticing. And it might sound complicated, but for those of you that have dealt with people like this will understand what I'm talking about. It may or may not resonate with anybody. I just used it as an example because it was quite the common thing that I've come across. Oh, it's my depression and anxiety, which I don't dispute, you don't have it. But underneath that, lying right beneath the surface of that, is actually a whole big unknown territory of narcissism as well. And one particular person that I encountered didn't even have depression and anxiety. So I say it's not fair on those that do struggle with it, because they can make things up and they're very grandiose in their behaviour. They'll claim they have things that they haven't, and they'll have illnesses that they don't have. There's a lot of things that go on with that, but different people and male and female sex is like affected differently by it. But the longer you stay amongst those situations, and if you suspect you are being abused by a narcissist, or you're trapped in a situation, you need to seek professional help, because it really is a thing. It really is damaging. The longer you're in it, the harder it is to get out. It becomes a conditioned way of life for the victim. And it damages your brain. And this is the hidden part that nobody sees, is that narcissistic abuse, and this is not disregarding anybody that hasn't been in it for long term, because it affects people differently. You could be in it for 10 minutes and it's caused you damage, but it causes damage to the brain. And in some instances, the only way to build your life is to rewire your brain, because it's extremely damaging. I mean, in some cases, for victims, it can be debilitating as well, which then leads to also further other problems. The depression and anxiety will come with part of that because of the abuse that you've suffered in that sense. So it is real. It does get thrown about a lot, but use your discernment to understand. And if you're confused, seek professional help, because they can refer you, your GP, to psychiatrists and psychologists that can help you dissect if you feel that you may be a victim of narcissistic abuse. Because sometimes, and I've said it before in my first reel about my divorce, that I would have rather have been punched in the face, because the damage that narcissism causes is deep. It causes deep-rooted trauma that there's no returning from. And you can heal to a certain level, but it's like that saying when they say, if you realise you're on the wrong train, get off at the earliest next stop. The longer you're on that train, the harder the return. Seek help.